The city of New York was always alive, buzzing with honking cars, glowing streetlights, and voices blending into a rhythm of chaos. But for Emily Parker, it was a place of quiet loneliness. At 24, she had grown used to walking the busy streets unseen, blending into the crowd like another face in a sea of strangers. She worked as a junior graphic designer in a mid-sized firm, often lost in deadlines and drafts that made her forget the meaning of real conversations. Emily's world revolved around work, coffee, and sketchbooks filled with ideas she never had the courage to share. She wasn't unhappy, but she wasn't alive either, just drifting, waiting for something that would give her heart a reason to beat louder. On the other side of the city lived Ethan Miller, 26, a young architect who had just returned from a project in Chicago. Ethan was ambitious, creative, and deeply passionate about designing places where people could belong. But despite his success, his heart carried a heavy silence. His father's recent passing left him restless, searching for a sense of direction in a city that suddenly felt too big and too empty. It was a rainy Thursday evening when their worlds first collided. Emily had forgotten her umbrella, again, and was hurrying across Fifth Avenue, clutching her sketchbook against her chest. Her shoes splashed against puddles, the city shimmering in reflections of neon lights. As she tried to cross the street, the traffic light turned red, forcing her to stop at the corner. That's when Ethan appeared, holding a large black umbrella. He noticed her soaked jacket and hesitant smile as she tried to shield herself with her sketchbook. Something about her expression caught his attention, the mix of frustration and quiet acceptance, like she was used to small battles like this. "Here," Ethan said, stepping closer. "You can share mine, unless you prefer turning into a watercolor painting tonight." Emily blinked at him, surprised by the warmth in his voice. For a second, she hesitated. Strangers in New York rarely stopped for one another, but something about his easy smile made her nod. "Thanks. I'd rather not look like a wet painting," she said softly. And so, under one umbrella, they walked together across the avenue. It was only a few minutes, but for both of them, time felt strangely suspended, as if the city had dimmed around them. Days passed, but fate wasn't done weaving their story. That weekend, Emily escaped into her favorite bookshop in Brooklyn, a quiet place filled with the smell of old paper and soft music. She loved hiding in the poetry section, where the world outside couldn't touch her. As she reached for a book of poems, another hand brushed against the spine at the same moment. She looked up, startled, and there he was, Ethan. "You?" Emily said, eyes wide. Ethan laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Looks like destiny couldn't resist crossing our paths again." Emily's lips curved into a shy smile. "Or maybe New York isn't as big as we think." They sat down in the bookshop cafe afterward, sipping coffee while talking about books, art, and the little things that made them feel alive. Emily admitted she sketched in her free time, but never showed her work. Ethan, in turn, shared his dream of designing buildings that weren't just structures, but stories carved in stone and glass. The connection between them grew quietly, like ink spreading across paper. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Ethan began meeting often, sometimes planned, sometimes by chance. They walked through Central Park, sat at riverside benches overlooking the Hudson, and discovered hole-in-the-wall diners that served the best pie. For Emily, it felt like colors were returning to her life. She laughed more, sketched more, and even started believing her ideas mattered. Ethan, on the other hand, found comfort in her presence. Her gentle encouragement gave him the strength to face the grief he had been suppressing since his father's death. But not everything was perfect. Life had a way of testing fragile bonds. One evening, Emily received news that her company wanted to relocate her to Los Angeles for a major project. It was a huge career opportunity, one she had dreamed of, but it also meant leaving New York and Ethan. When she told him, Ethan's heart sank. "That's amazing, Emily. You should go," he said, forcing a smile. But Emily caught the flicker of pain in his eyes. "It doesn't feel amazing if it means walking away from what matters most," she whispered. Ethan was torn. He didn't want to hold her back, but the thought of losing her terrified him. For the first time in weeks, silence grew between them. A few days before Emily's scheduled departure, she visited the bookshop one last time. To her surprise, Ethan was there, waiting with a rolled-up sheet of paper in his hands. "I couldn't let you leave without showing you this," he said, unrolling the paper. It was a sketch of a building, an art gallery, but no,